Welcome back to A Second Chance at Love and Marriage. I'm Shanice.
And I'm Sean.
And today we're going to talk and share about the importance of counseling and how it has had a positive impact on our marriage. And we've done individual counseling before, but now bringing us together as a couple and having a second chance at love and marriage, we wanted to make sure that we continue to progress, not as individuals, but collectively as a couple. And one of the things that we had some hurdles in is our communication. And we wanted to get a professional opinion who could not just give us answers, but help us to communicate, help us to bring both of our minds together as individuals and to be effective in our marriage and communicating and understanding and listening to one another. And how when we encounter different moments that may be uncomfortable, how to more effectively deal with those areas instead of stonewalling or shutting down or any of those things. So we have made a lot of progress, wouldn't you say?
For sure. For sure. And it has helped our marriage tremendously. Because one of the best things or most important things we often talk about it is communication. So it's taught me, to listen better and to just try to understand and things of that nature. Counseling hasn't always been something that I was gung-ho into getting into. I didn't always think it was necessary or even beneficial, but once I started doing my own private counseling and things of that nature, and I saw how it benefited and how it helped me, when me and Shanice decided to do the marriage counseling, I was all for it. One of the things I believe we really do need to understand, admit that we need help, and it's okay to get it.
Yeah.
It's okay to get help, especially coming from our culture. It's not always encouraged to get, certain kind of help, but it's okay. I mean, it's beneficial, and as long as you want to work on your relationship, we definitely say counseling would be good and help me to just be a better communicator and listen and merge, like Shanice said, merge our two personalities and life together. This has been a journey. It's been a good journey for me.
Yeah, and I think I think what you said is really good because one, a person has to admit that, they need some help. That doesn't, and I think that's the hardest thing for a lot of people, which we've witnessed in some situations with people.
Sometimes me, myself.
Is like they don't want to admit that they need the help. And I mean, a little bit of help can go a long way. Just with accepting that help, just with, like you said, admitting that you do need the help. Because once you do admit that you do need the help, help comes.
Help comes.
It really does, because this, this came, I mean, we have a really great counselor who's really good. And what did she tell us? She told us that she was glad that she was almost like surprised,
for sure, that we
and overjoyed.
Like we're utilizing the tools that she's given us.
Yeah, because every time we come, we'd come back to her, she'd always say, okay, good. And she was, what I liked about this is because what I like about her is that she remembers what we talked about last time. And then so we'll pick up from there and she'll ask, how are we dealing with this or that? How has this or that been going? So it's not like, because I mean, some of us like me have had bad counselor experiences to where you have to tell the person like you starting over each time. It's like, okay, didn't I tell you this last week? How come you don't remember this stuff? I mean, what is you getting paid for? So with her, I'm so glad that it's like we pick up where like the growth is continual and she can see that. And sometimes like we think like, oh, we doing okay?
Right.
And me, I'm like, are we doing okay?
Right.
Like, are we making progress? That's always my thing. Am I making progress? And so to hear that from her, that, man, you guys are making tremendous progress, right? You should, and I think one time we even celebrated the progress. I mean, we always celebrate our progress, though, because that's really important for us. And I think it's important for anybody to celebrate your wins. Whatever those wins may be for you, celebrate those wins, because it's okay.
Right.
I'm going to say this, when other people celebrate your wins, but I think it's even better when you have that own, self-reflection and gratitude for the work that you put into your, not only as an individual, but also as a couple, like together collectively. Like, this is real for us.
It is.
Like, this is really, really real for us. And we want to make it work for us and for our family and for our children so that we can leave a legacy and so that we can enjoy our lives together. So we want it to be effective. We want our communication to be effective. We want, if there, there are times where we may have gone through this or we may have had a disagreement, we want it to be worth it. It's like, okay, but that disagreement produced fruit.
Right.
That disagreement just wasn't just because. It's like we had results from that disagreement. We had results from that heated moment. Yeah. So it's not for nothing. And just to have this counselor, I know one of the things that I wanted to talk about, if you didn't have nothing else.
No, and I just wanted to say one thing though. It's like me and Shanice isn't chronic counselors. Like we gotta need a counsel. It's gotta have an end to it, and that's what we talked about with our counselor. Like we don't want to go through years of counseling. Right. And now, don't get me wrong. If it need to be, we in this for however long we need to be. But we want help. We want to help so we can move on. We don't want a third member in our marriage.
Right.
We want a member that's going to help us so that we can progress to the point where we get over the situations. Right. You know what I mean? And that's the thing. The drawback on certain counseling is this, like, we get so used to it, we become chronic counselors. We need counseling, this and that. And get as much counseling, but see an end of it. Right. See a point where you can stand, where you can make the decisions. And this is the point of utilizing the tools. Right. Because if these people give you the tools, they're giving you the tools so that you can utilize them within the setting that you need to make. So I just wanted to make that point that me and Shanice are progressive people. We want to get to a point where we use the counseling as it is, and we're going to automatically use our tools. But we ain't going to have to keep going through years and years of counseling, not on the same marriage situation. As stuff come up, and if we can't deal with them on ourselves, we're going to get a counselor. But at least see an end of it, Don't
have
see
a
the
goal.
Yeah, don't see the counselor as the fix. We got a counselor now, everything is cool. No, work the program, work the things, and become better.
And that's just like, even with pastoral counseling, it's like there should be a goal. And that's one of the things that she asked us, like, what is your goal? Like, what brought you here? And we have a goal, and we're progressing towards that goal. And we constantly see that progress because we're applying the knowledge, which is wisdom now. Because it's one thing just to know, but it's another thing to apply what you know, and that becomes the wisdom. So we're able to utilize the tools, like Sean said, that she's given us, and we've seen the effects of that. We're seeing the fruits of that, and we're enjoying the fruit of that. I know one of the things that she talked to us about is the Four Horsemen and how to stop them with their antidotes. So I know if I turn this around, it'll be backwards to you, but hopefully, I'm pretty sure you can probably Google this on the internet, but it's been helpful. I even had times where I just brought this piece of paper out to make sure that I was following before I entered into a conversation, because I'll just give you some of the points from here. So you got the criticism side, which is verbally attacking personality or character. You want to stay away from that, and you want to go to the side where there's a gentle startup. Talk about your feelings using I feel like statements and express a positive need.
Yeah, that's one of the ones that helped me. I never tried to attack Shanice's character, but not knowing that when you bring up a situation and you say you, it makes a person feel under attack. Yeah. So by just owning it, saying, you know what, this is how I felt. I don't know if you intended that to make me feel like that, but this is how I felt, and this is how I choose to respond. It's more of a gentle thing. Nobody wants to be attacked. Yeah. Nobody wants to feel like, oh, hold up, I gotta put up, So that was a great tool for me to have a gentle startup, so things don't go from 5 to 10.
Yeah, and it is as we have this, because we have two copies. He took a copy and I took a copy. So, it's constantly going back to, what you learned. It's like when you go through school, you hear the teacher teaching you, but then, there's going to be a test. There's going to be a moment when what you've learned, now you have to apply it. So part of you applying that is like constant practice. And this is something that, that we have to keep looking at every now and then. I know for me, just to make sure that I stay the course, that I don't stop or stunt the growth that I've already had. Another one is contempt, attacking sense of self with an intent to insult or abuse. I'm going to read that again. Contempt, attacking sense of self with an intent to insult or abuse. And the other side of that is build culture of appreciation. Remind yourself of your partner's positive qualities and find gratitude and positive actions. So I think we're really big on appreciation, just out of a genuineness for appreciating one another. And I mean, because there were times that we didn't have one another. And so we are very mindful of that appreciation, and it's very genuine too. So.
And I've made it an effort. I've made it a conscious effort, to make sure that Shanice feels appreciated. Sometimes you could tell a person that you appreciate them, but when you don't help out with the dishes, even though you may have, when you don't open the door, when you don't do things that shows appreciation, it makes a person feel like, am I in this by myself? You know what I mean? So as much as you need to say it, show it. And that's one of the things that help, with me. Shanice affirms me a lot of times that she appreciates me, and I know it. I guess it's more words for her to say to me, and then me just to show her. But it's a good form of communicating our appreciation, whether with actions or words. And it helps when you do have those situations that you have to talk about, that the person don't feel like you just keep dumping stuff, because you have shown that you appreciate it. So it makes it a little bit more softer when you have to deal with certain things, because you have shown that you do appreciate their good. You've highlighted their good. So if you have to say something that maybe not feel so good, they won't say, well, at least it's a balance.
Yeah. I like what you said, though. It's not just about, words alone, but it's also the actions. Because the actions are important. The words that we speak is one thing, but the follow up to that should be expressing what you just said. Expressing what you're constantly saying with actions. So that's really good. Defensiveness, which is one, victimizing yourself to ward off a perceived attack and reverse the blame. Okay, so that was like my thing. So take responsibility. This is the other side of that. Take responsibility, accept your partner's perspective, and offer an apology for any wrongdoing. Okay, so I didn't know it was names, and I didn't know that the Four Horsemen thing existed. Because then it's like, by even looking at this, I could see myself in this. It's like, oh, I don't want to be that.
Right.
I don't want to be that person. That's not who I truly am. That's not who I truly, authentically am. So take responsibility for my actions, accept my partner's perspective. So our perspectives on things are different, a lot of times. And the accepting of another perspective, and it's like, oh, okay.
Right.
I can accept, I don't agree with your perspective, but I can accept that because you're a person.
Right.
And everybody is not cookie cutter. We are not all made, it's obvious, we're not all made the same shape, size, color, ethnicity, with the same mind, the same way of thinking and doing and being. So, yeah.
And taking responsibility is it's a good way to admit to yourself that, okay, I do need some help, and it's, you got to be true though, because some people I'll take responsibility, I'm sorry, but they just saying it to end the conversation, or to move on. But with me, I've always said, I do want to apologize, but I want to be truthful with my apology. So if I don't even know what I did, I'm not going to say sorry. I'm going to be like, how did I offend you? But when she said, I'm not going to say, well, you did this first. So taking responsibility isn't excusing your actions, or is it shifting the blame? It's saying that no matter what happened, I was responsible in this situation. You know what I mean? And that's one of the things that I've constantly tried to do in this relationship. And I keep trying to encourage myself to say, it's okay. We do make mistakes, but if you find out what that mistake was, you don't have to do it again. Yeah. You know what I mean? So I take responsibility of my feelings. And that's one of the things that I had to accept, that I do got feelings, and my feelings were hurt, and I take responsibility in that, and I ask Shanice, how can I do better? So I think that's a very important thing for men, not just to say sorry to our wives, but to take responsibility for what we have done, and that sorry, that apology needs to have some kind of resolve, that I'm resolved to work through this so this won't keep happening. Yeah. You know what I mean? And that's great. And that way you won't always have a defensive wife, or you won't be defensive because you saying, yeah, I did do that. Yeah. You know what I mean? I did do that, and I don't mean to do that. So, we're going to work through that.
And I think, too, when people say, when men say that to women, some women may get even more upset when they say, oh, I'm sorry, and just not, right. It's like, you just saying I'm sorry just because.
You don't want to argue no more.
Yeah. Right. So it's like, it's like you add an insult to injury, because, people are not stupid. Your husband, your wife is not stupid. They know whether or not you're genuinely, authentically considering how they felt and what they said.
And I tell you, what will happen is that once you say sorry and don't mean it and don't get a reason, you're going to keep doing that. Yeah. You're going to keep, because you really don't know what you're doing. So your sorry isn't a genuine resolve to get help. It's just, let's just say that so we can move on. Yeah. But don't you want to know why you offended your wife, so that you won't continue to do that? So that's just, to me, that's such generic apologies, and it's not really real, that it only hurts the relationship in the long run. So take responsibility, but also have a resolve to say, you know what, we're going to make sure that this don't happen no more.
Yeah. And then, too, that kind of makes me think, though, why wouldn't a person want to, deal with the root of the issue?
Right.
Or why don't you want to get to the bottom of why this made, her upset?
Right.
Why wouldn't you, why are you avoiding this? Because eventually is one, is things are going to keep coming up. And two, is that the way you deal with everything? Right. Do you kind of not want to deal with a lot of little things because it's the little foxes?
That's spoils the vineyard.
Yeah. So, but that's just our opinion.
Yeah, we're not trying to counsel you guys. We're just trying to tell you what have happened to us.
So, stonewalling is another one. And that is withdrawing to avoid conflict and convey disapproval, distance, and separation. So the other side of that is physiological self-soothing. Take a break and spend that time doing something soothing and distracting. So, and that's what I had to learn to balance. Like, instead of stonewalling, avoiding, I'm just withdrawing. I'm going back into my cave. That's an easy way for me to kind of deal with things. Like, I can just be to myself. I can just think about something else. Creating distance to convey disapproval and separation. So the good thing is just letting Sean know that, look, I just need a moment to just think about all of this for a minute, just to, I just need a moment, okay? I just need some time to gather this. Check back in with me later. And that is physiological, self-soothing, taking a break, and spend that time doing something soothing and distracting. That may be just watching TV for me.
Right.
Watching a TV show that is just about nothing, because I rarely watch TV. And I even cut back even more since one of my shows I'm stepping away from. Right. But
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and with the whole stonewalling thing, a lot of times we can do it subconsciously where we're not really knowing that we're doing it, but we going back to the one before, we actually trying to defend ourselves. So instead of dealing with it, we just put up this front and say, you know what, I'm not going to deal with it. Or we can say, because we have made this mistake, we'll we'll deal with it, but not now, and don't get back to it. You know, where we found out in our counseling session that I'm a pursuer. You know what I mean? I'm a pursuer. I want to talk about certain things at certain times, but I have to learn that Shanice need her time by herself. So as long as we communicate that we'll talk about this, we'll put a period on it and say we're going to talk about it, you know, whenever you feel comfortable or whenever I feel comfortable, then we come back to the table. And man, believe me, coming back to the table when a person has really thought about it, it's really a conversation, because now not only do we take responsibility, we hear each other out.
Yeah.
Like, oh, I can see why you know, and then we learn so much more about each other. That whole situation, like Shanice talked about earlier, it's a benefit because we learn so much more about each other, and that only brings us closer. You know, so this whole counseling thing with us is it's really made us so close now that I don't invite bad, but when they come, I'm not upset. I'm like, okay, this is just going to bring us closer. We're going to deal with what we have to deal with. I'm going to learn so much more about Shanice, and you know, and it's going to strengthen our relationship.
Yeah, and you know it really has. And there was something that you said I want to go back to. Um, when you talked about how it brings us like closer together. I don't know if that was the point though. I can't remember. But anyway, just the fact that just giving somebody, giving each other that time, that space to say, let's just come back to this, because again, everybody is not the same. Some people may need the time to mentally process everything, to mentally take things in and regroup and find out, people like me, we need that. Right. It's like we need the time and the space. Don't bombard people like me, people like us with a whole bunch of yeah. Okay? Give us a moment. Right. Please, because it really works out better that way. It works out better when things are like all the way down, and then we can think about it, we can process it mentally, and then the communication, like Sean said, is like more effective.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
And as much as Shanice do need her distance, sometimes I need mine. You know what I mean? I need my distance, but I just don't like walk away and don't say nothing. You know what I mean? I'd be like, yeah, I'm working through this. It was some issues that we had a little while, it was a while ago, but I had to just think, and it took me a couple days, and I thank God for Shanice's grace. She didn't really sweat me about it or never, not anything like that. But once I came back to the table, I had really concrete, information and stuff to help her to understand why I was dealing with what I was dealing with. And from that point on, I was so happy that Shanice took a lot of the information that I said and helped me to deal with it. She was like, okay, you know what I mean? She didn't just give me she was like, all right, and I appreciate you saying these things. You know what I mean? But I needed a little time, and she gave me that time, and it was so much, beneficial, and it was so relaxing. It was so relaxing because I didn't feel as if it was a lot of pressure, and I didn't feel like I was going through it by myself. And that's the one thing about our relationship and the counseling. We're learning that we're not going through this by ourselves. We went through counseling before by ourselves.
Right.
But now we going to counseling together. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? It's like, man, I can't even describe what it's doing for our relationship and for our lives. That I couldn't even see myself without it now. Mm-hmm. I know eventually we're going to get through with it. But I just thank God we took that step to do it. Yeah. Because now, I'm looking forward to the future.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I think too one of the good things that we both wanted for the counseling is not just to spring things up all of a sudden, like just start pulling things out the box when we got into mm-hmm. the counseling session. Mm-hmm. We kind of like had an overall like, okay, well, this is something that we can bring up in counseling.
Right.
This is something that maybe we can talk about or get another perspective on. And that was really good. Good, really good for us.
Yeah, and I appreciate that because our communication is pre-counsel a lot of times, and we see that, well, maybe we need somebody else to help us with this, but we don't just come to, like Shanice said, we don't just come to counseling having harbored stuff in our heart 2 or 3 weeks. I know the counselor would be like, man, this is a lot, you know. So we deal with our issues as they come up, but we also know that, okay, we can need some help with these issues. You know what I mean? So, you know, we do our work. We do our pre-work and we do our post-work, and we focusing on our relationship. You know what I mean? So that's what we wanted to share with y'all. Just counseling is good if you utilize it for the right reasons, and and you take, you know, advantage of what it is for.
Right.
You know, and, you know, build your relationship.
And I think it's really good now because both of us are at different phases in our life. The phase, you know, like we on our way to 50.
She like to remind me of that a lot.
We on our way to 50, so it's like my approach and my way of thinking now is a lot different than it was when, you know, 20 years ago. The way that I deal with stuff now is different than I was, you know, 20 something years ago. So I want to, you know, maintain the peace that I have on the inside and the peace that we have within our relationship. So yeah, a lot of these things, you know, some stuff is like a lot of stuff, especially with the counseling that we have learned, is new for us. And it's like, oh, okay. And we have to have the willingness and the openness to see it from another perspective. And that's what the counselor, the therapist, licensed therapist brought in for us, is another perspective, a neutral perspective with, you know, without anything attached to it. So, and I understand that people may get, you know, pastoral counseling, but I even remember with pastoral counseling, you know, the pastors that I knew even from years ago, you know, they want to know, like, what do you hope to accomplish, you know, from this counseling? And I must say, don't wear your pastors out. Counseling, like Sean said, shouldn't be for a lifetime. It shouldn't be for the next 60 years of your marriage. You know, you should be working towards a goal. And especially if you're considering getting married, I highly recommend counseling, 1, individually, and then 2, collectively. So, especially if you've been through any type of trauma in your life, you really, really, really should consider some counseling.
Most definitely. So I guess you see the relationship that you see that we have that looks like it's having no problems. We working. You know what I mean? Sometimes people see us on these YouTube channels or hear the podcast and be like, man, we just working.
Yeah.
We're working, and we're happy to be together, but we're dealing with our own issues, but we're never fake with y'all. You know, we're going to be real, but we're going to also grow in our life. And that's what I love about my wife. She's so progressive, and she's so willing to do whatever work it is to make this relationship work. And I feel the same way. So we're partners.
Yes. High five. Well, again, thank you so much for joining us for this episode of A Second Chance at Love and Marriage. If you haven't got your beautiful affirmation cards, the link is in the show notes. And we'll see you next time. Take care.
Bye.